Breaking news out of South Korea as transgender Sergeant Byun Heesoo, 23 years old, was found dead in her apartment this evening. She is said to have committed suicide. I pulled together all the information I could regarding this case in order to get it out to you, so forgive me if I'm doing a lot of reading during this video. So Sergeant Byun Heesoo, she served as a tank pilot in the 5th Armored Brigade of the Republic of Korea. This was back when she was still identifying as a male and before she had her gender reassignment surgery. While she was serving in the military, she took a vacation or medical leave to Thailand in order to get the reassignment surgery. Now, Sergeant Byun hoped to remain in the military, saying that she would serve as a female soldier. However, the case was sent to the Military Review Committee after a mandatory investigation, and the hospital they had a hospital check. Health check, and they determined that she had 3rd-degree mental and physical disability, and on January 22nd in the year 2000 she was discharged from the military. Now, in an article by the BBC, which was published on January 22nd, they covered a press conference that Sergeant Byun had done. She joined the military as a man, but had gender reassignment surgery in 2019 as a result of suffering from gender dysphoria. According to sources, she did have permission to do the surgery and take her leave from the military and go to Thailand. Sergeant Byun, in her press conference, again, this is on January 22nd, the year 2000, so a little over a year ago, she accused the military of deep-rooted intolerance of sexual minorities. As we know, South Korea remains quite conservative on the matters of sexual identity, both in the eyes of men and women. Sergeant Byun's case had led to debate over the treatment of transgender soldiers, as well as those from the wider LGBT community. As you guys know already, or should know by watching this channel, all men in Korea are required to serve in their military. In the military, there is current conscription, aka a draft, that is ongoing. Only men are forced to serve, not women. During her 45-minute appearance in the interview back in January 2020, she said, "I will continue to fight until the day I can remain to serve in the army. I'll challenge the decision until the end to the Supreme Court," she said. Now, she did not plan on having the gender reassignment surgery before joining the military. However, she said it was recommended to do so by doctors at a military hospital where she was sent after suffering from mental health problems, which arose from gender dysphoria, which is defined as distress from the internal conflict between physical gender and gender identity. She said it was an extremely difficult decision to let my base know my identity, but once I did, I felt much better. I thought I would finish serving in the army and then go through the transition surgery and then re-enter the army as a female soldier, but my depression got too severe. Ms. Byun said she had not expected to be forced to leave the army. Her superior officers had visited her in the hospital and had been discussing where she would be redeployed after her treatment. They suggested she become a role model for LGBT people in the armed forces. She said, "Apart from my gender identity, I want to show everyone that I can also be one of the great soldiers who protect this country." The military said the case constitutes a reason for being unable to continue service. The military statement added it was determined to avoid unfair discrimination and treatment. So it seems to be a little bit unclear about why the discharge happened. Apparently, the military knew about the fact that she was going through surgery. They gave her permission to go to Thailand in order to get the surgery. However, they're saying that the discharge was for 2 reasons, both a mental disability and a physical disability. Now, I don't want to jump to conclusions and say that the military said that the reason for her mental disability was because of this gender dysphoria. She admitted herself that she was going through depression, and that could have been enough of a reason to be discharged from the military. Even straight males, for example, that are going through heavy depression, clinical depression, I'm sure they would have a high chance of being discharged from the military as well. As far as the reason for the quote physical disability, that might be due to the fact that while taking the hormones, her body became physically weaker, and in order to serve in the military, you have to have a certain physical standard. There are even men that do not meet that physical standard, and therefore, as we talked about in an earlier video, I think it was the Steve Yu video, that if you are deemed physically weak, you are not allowed to serve in the military, at least in a physical capacity. However, you can move to more of a blue collar role. I wanted to continue up on the story. Beyond January 22nd, Sergeant Byun was filing a petition back in January, and as she mentioned in the press conference that she would take this to the Supreme Court if she had to. The court decided February 10, 2020 to correct the gender column from male to female, so she legally was able to change her gender from male to female in the government's eyes. It was expected that if the military overruled or changed the decision about the discharge, that many groups, including religious groups, would have criticized the military, and state agencies would take measures in order to overturn the overturned discharge. So there was kind of it would have turned into a big heated national debate among many groups. On July 3rd, 2020, Sergeant Byun's personal appeal to re-enter the military was rejected, and on August 11th of the same year, again 2020, a cancellation suit was filed. February 1st, 2021, the National Human Rights Commission of Korea recommended that the mandatory discharge be canceled. Again, this is just a recommendation from a human rights group. However, the Army said it would not accept the request, and then on March 3rd, which is today, Sergeant Byun was found dead at her home in Cheongju. Now, during this whole process, the women's organizations, including Korea's Women's Association, made remarks in support of Sergeant Byun while criticizing the military's extreme conservatism and calling for a change. However, the Women's Association was then criticized by others, saying that why is the Women's Association, making a big deal saying how the military is so conservative and needs to be more progressive. However, the same Korea's Women's Association is not making comments about how women are not forced to do military service. Conscription is only for men, and that's kind of hypocritical to say that the military needs to be more progressive, but at the same time not coming forward and saying that women also need to serve in the military. A majority of the opinion polls on transgender people's military service showed a negative response, according to Gallup Korea. In April 2020, on various websites, including Naver, which is the Korean Google, if you didn't already know, DC Inside, which is, it's kind of like a mix between 4chan and Reddit. Maybe not as terrible as 4chan, but also not as clean as Reddit. And YouTubers showed a negative response to the incident. The main points included the psychological discomfort of female soldiers who would have to live together if Sergeant Byun returned to the military as a female. So this is more of the female soldiers becoming uncomfortable. And criticized Sergeant Byun for changing her gender before finishing her military service, meaning that she took private interest. She took into account private interest above public interest. What's noteworthy about this is that women in their 20s have more negative opinions than those in their 30s because of the recent spread of TERF-oriented feminism. Now, what does TERF mean? TERF is Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists. That's not an acronym I made up. I'm not calling them radical, although I think that they are. This is a term that you can Google it. And this brings the question, are the feminists of Korea really for equality? We have to take a look at the real word of feminism and its origin, and feminism is equality for all, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of gender, and regardless of, transgender. And that's what feminism is. However, it seems that some of these feminists do not want equality, and what they actually want is just more power for females that were born females. And by the fact that somebody was born a man and changed their gender to a female, some of these feminists are rejecting that, and they're saying, no, that's still a man. They were a man just a year ago. We do not want them in the same category as us. They have not been oppressed like we have. They were a man, now they're a woman. Maybe they changed for selfish reasons. We don't know, but we don't care. We only want to help women that were born women. And that's kind of the gist, the feeling that I'm getting from some of these feminist groups. This isn't the first time they've spoken out against something like this. There was a case, I believe, last year, which had to do with Sukmyeon's Women's University, where they admitted a transgender into the law school. However, the female students protested and wanted to reject that, saying again that transgender woman is not actually a woman, she's a man. So, and we don't want them in the school. So I know the transgender issue is still a massive issue in the West that has only been really unfolding in the public spotlight the past couple of years. However, in Korea, this is a very brand new thing. So it's, being gay isn't even really acceptable in Korea yet. Transgender, it's very hard to find anyone that's transgender, and there are not many cases to refer to for incidences like this. So I'm sure as time goes on, we're going to see more cases where transgenders are really questioning the current system and trying to see if it's discriminatory or not. Now, I was not following this case before today. I was just received a tip from one of my viewers about this story, so thank you for that. I was able to cover it and do a brief amount of research, get you the facts. However, I have not formed my own opinion on it. I'm not transphobic. I think if somebody wants to change their gender, that's great. I think that would entail having to actually do the surgery and having to get the hormone treatment. However, if they've done all of those things and they want to be called the opposite gender, that's fine. I'm not a big fan of, all of gender liquidity and how there's an infinite number of genders. I think there's two genders, a man and a woman. And if there was someone born a man and they had the surgery and hormones and became a woman, I'd call them a, she, her, or whatever. And vice versa. If a woman became a man, I would call him a he, him. I wouldn't call Zimzer or any of those things. However, I do draw the line in certain regards. I don't think transgender women should be allowed to participate in female sports. This is a topic that's very big in the US and other Western countries, where these men that were born, transgender women that were born men, change themselves to women. They're just crushing it in sports, and a lot of them have had advantages from developing a certain amount of years as a male. That has to do with like bone density and other hormones as well. And I think that that's wrong. So I really question the reasoning why Sergeant Byun was so adamant for wanting to continue her service in the military when she didn't have to and she wasn't being allowed. Did she really want to serve her country, or was this a personal trial for her where she felt that, maybe it had something to do with her depression, that she had to overcome this and win, and then as things were not looking so good in terms of winning the case, she succumbed Grammar Nazis go to town. Correct me, and she succumbed, whatever, to the depression, or if this was just, you know, wanting to make a point about how transgenders are not being treated the same in Korea. I'm not sure which one of it was. Again, I do not have an opinion on this case as to whether or not Sergeant Byun should have been allowed to serve in the military as a female, or if she should not have been allowed. However, if it was in fact that she was still depressed and she may have been considering she committed suicide, I think that might have been a good enough reason to not let her continue the service, at least for the time being. She was only 23 years old, which means she would have had, you know, at least a decade to continue the service at a later time in life. So that's the video I have today. Very sad news. Regardless if you agree with somebody's opinions or if you think that they're completely wrong, it's always very sad when somebody takes their own life. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If not, thumbs down. You know the deal. I don't think that's really appropriate after talking about this news, but I'll catch you guys next time.